The Texas economy certainly was deeply affected, as was the rest of the nation, by a severe recession. Our economy began losing jobs in the summer of 2008, and it extended for well over a year. We lost about 430,000 jobs here in our state, or about 4% of all our payroll employment. A sharp difference between Texas and the United States as a whole is that Texas has now regained all the jobs it lost during the recessionary period. We've actually regained about 440,000 jobs from the trough. The United States as a whole, however, out of all the 9 million jobs that was lost, has regained about 36%. So certainly in Texas we're performing, and it is noticeably performing more strongly in the United States as a whole. One of the things that is not ticking down as fast as one would hope is the unemployment rate. The unemployment rate in the United States actually reached 10%. It has ticked down to 8.5%. The current unemployment rate in our state is 7.8%, down from about 8.5% a few months ago. If you'll turn to page 3, please. So certainly the employment situation in our state has strengthened noticeably since we began adding jobs and as the recession has eased and we began to recover. The Texas economy has rebounded from the recent recession. We have made great strides in our employment situation, adding back all the jobs that have been lost. However, Texas is a rapidly growing state. Our labor force has grown. And in the years of the recession, we added people to our labor force that are currently not yet finding jobs. So actually, regaining all those jobs is a very good thing and a very positive thing, but we still have some ways to go. As far as the consumer goes, the Texas consumer was equally hard hit by the recession. Our retail trade figures were down for 2 years in a row. However, it looks as though the Texas consumer is back. They are buying. The numbers are probably about in the 5% to 6% range in terms of their growth, but we are back growing and no longer shrinking. As you can see on page 5, our sales tax, as this committee well knows, shrank for 2 years in a row as a consequence of the recession. Last year was a very positive year, the tax growing about 9%. And certainly so far this year, and we're only a few months into it, we can see a continuation of that trend. It's being powered ahead by consumer spending, which I just touched on, and actually receiving quite a bit of a boost from the oil and gas industry. Many of the items they pay sales tax on that are used in the oil patch. Interestingly, in getting back to what I just touched on about employment, our sales tax is just now beginning to operate at levels that are surpassing what we saw in fiscal 2008 and the early months of fiscal 2009. On page 6, there is a graph that just graphically demonstrates the effects of the recession. You can see it was up, then we had several years of down, and then you can see that the sales tax revenues, and this is the general revenue portion, is actually marching back and growing. Very quickly, 2 more things. Our motor vehicle sales tax is also growing quite rapidly. It appears as though that purchases of automobiles that were put off during the recession, consumers now are feeling confident enough to go back to the dealerships, and there is a large degree of what appears to be pent-up demand being released, and we're selling quite a number of cars now, cars that probably would normally have been sold the last several years, but for the recession. The franchise tax. This is, in essence, a brief summary of what we saw last year. We won't get any actual revenue from the franchise tax for this fiscal year until May, as you know. And finally, severance taxes. Severance taxes are doing extremely well, with oil prices near $100 a barrel, and with production actually increasing the last several years. Severance taxes are slightly above trend. The natural gas tax, although production is flat to slightly down, and we've covered the prices, which actually have not yet impacted the revenue, but will in the coming months. One of the things we're seeing south of San Antonio is that not only is gas being recovered from these wells, but also other things such as propane and butane. And propane and butane are not priced at the low natural gas price, but are priced much more closely to what you'd see with oil. So these wells are actually bringing in more money for their operators because of that. Finally, the rainy day fund. We closed out fiscal 11 with approximately $5 billion in the fund. This past fall, we made the constitutional transfer, and so as of today, the fund has approximately $6.1 billion in it. We project at the end of fiscal 13, this fiscal biennium, that the fund will have a balance of $7.3 billion.